This is the TTArtisan 50mm f1.2 on Fuji. So in this episode, this is all going to be about whether this lens, which was kindly provided to me by TTArtisans for an honest review, how well is this lens suited for street photography and travel photography. So let's first have a look at the lens, that's what we first do, then I'll share some of my experiences with this lens towards you, and since it is very fast, yes, f1.2, let's see if it actually delivers, and in the end I'll also provide you kind of a roundup with also some alternatives for this price point. So let's first have a closer look at the lens. So this lens comes in all manual, it has no weather sealing, it has a filter size of 52mm. The weight is 336 grams. Yeah, so it's definitely a metal lens. The focusing distance comes in at 50 centimeters. It comes in with 10 blades, 7 elements in 5 groups. And it is available on the Sony E mount, Micro Four Thirds, Nikon Z mount, L mount, and obviously the X mount where this review is going to be on. I think when we look at the build quality, this is a pretty solid build quality. It's a bit of a shame there's no little rubber gasket for weather sealing, but anything else than that for a price of 119 euros. Once you start shooting with this, if you never shot with manual lenses, small tutorial now, the first thing you need to do is put your little button here into M, then you'll go into your menu settings and you'll first have to enter the actual focal length of the lens. Yeah, that tells your camera basically, oh, we're shooting on a manual lens which has a 50mm focal length. Yeah, once you've done that, I'll definitely advise you to take the third step, which is to put your focus peaking on. This basically means you can pretty much see whether or not you're in focus, because you'll see the subject light up in red, blue, green or white. Yeah, so that was a little tutorial here. Now let's go into whether this lens delivers for street and or travel photography. Now the f1.2, as I just said there, sets a high benchmark. Well, the one thing I did expect with this lens was that it had some kind of vignetting, and it doesn't, which is very good, both in daylight and at night, both for travel and or street photography. None of that. Let's go to the second part, which is fringing. Which means you get a purple or a blue or a green haze over background subjects. This is where this lens is inconclusive. Yes, it's inconclusive. If you shoot during daylight, I see little to no fringing, even from f1.2 to f1.8. It can be there, but 2.0 apertures and upwards, there's no fringing. That's during daylight. Now, during nighttime, yes, there is bizarrely enough a lot of fringing, as you can see here. I doubted myself so much on this topic that I asked my dear friend, Mr. Rempi, who is a seasoned street photographer and nowadays is starting to get a bit of traction by getting his work exposed, based in Krakow. I asked him, you take this lens for night photography because that's more his thing, street photography. And, you know, my suspicions became pretty much true when I tried it, and he kind of confirmed it. This lens is for night photography, despite its 1.2 aperture, is not the best lens at all. What you will see is, first of all, sharpness throughout, wide open. On center sharpness, this lens struggles. So and there's no real consistency here. So whether you shoot slow shutter speeds, high shutter speeds, it doesn't really matter. If you're stationary, it seems to do a good job, but when you're, let's say, on the move or you're dynamically shooting something, this lens is not very sharp, and that's an understatement. And it can also be the focusing technique, but I saw Mr. Rempi having similar issues. So this is something that is really strange between f1.2 and 2.2-ish. In general, what you will see is center sharpness is random. It seems to, I don't know, it seems to depend on something. At night, you see big fringing, specifically around light sources, which is pretty normal, but normally you would expect a camera to do it a lot better. During daytime, I haven't seen any fringing, which is between those kind of apertures. Yeah, so for street photography here, what I've noticed is from f4.6, suddenly things get a lot better. So if you're a street photographer who normally shoots at f8, this is a pretty good lens. You'll still have the fringing, but not in the same pronounced form that you have when you're shooting wide open. Yeah, so for street photography, I would say this lens during daylight is pretty okay, still not consistent at times in terms of sharpness. During nighttime, I would definitely state, this is definitely not the best lens to actually choose. For travel photography, it's a bit differently because travel photography is a little bit of a different genre than street photography. But you're still going to have, if you shoot wide open, the same issues as what I and my friend experienced. And if you already own this lens, can you share in the comments below what your experiences are? Because it could be that I have a bad copy. It could be. TTArtisan, you produce this lens, an f1.2. But it suffers from the same issues that the 35mm has, although this build quality is arguably much better. So in that sense, I find it, it's difficult for me to be very negative about this lens, but it's also difficult for me to be very positive about this lens. For instance, if you want to shoot sun stars, yeah, the ones I've tried are really unpronounced, so they're not really performing there as well. What I will say is that if you shoot from f5.6 all the way up to f11, you get pretty good quality of image, but still it's not always sharp, which is drives me crazy. Now, when it comes to the bokeh as well, the bokeh here is definitely not bad on this camera, but specifically in low light, yeah, you'll definitely see the fringing. It's kind of, it's not, you know, nice halos or whatever. It's decent bokeh, but it suffers from quite a few things which could be better. Yeah, so if you use this for social media or something, hey, nobody's going to really notice it. But once you start, let's say, going on bigger screens or you want to print it, then you'll definitely see it. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is I haven't really decided about this lens. Technically speaking, I think it can be a lot better, but also a lot worse. Now, my own shooting experience here, and I think that's also important, that's often overlooked on YouTube, is I enjoy the manual experience. I really enjoy it because it's slightly different. Yeah, you kind of don't point and shoot. You kind of have to get in there and do your composition and all this. So I like it. One small detail is this is well balanced. This lens comes in about 300 grams. Now this body weight is a little bit lighter it seems, but it lays nice in the hand. It doesn't give you dead arm on the end of the day. Yeah, the image quality is maybe not consistent, but it definitely isn't poor. So you can use it specifically when you shoot black and white. Then some of the issues with fringing really don't stand out that much, but in color you do. So I think for travel photography, this lens is very good. I think for street photography, if you're happy to shoot at f5.6 to f10, yeah, and a lot of street photographers do shoot that kind of mode because, you know, you have less of an issue. Yeah, I think for the f1.2 here, I think TTArtisan could do a much better job here, but I know the price of the lens will actually go up. Now, what I would recommend, yeah, do I recommend this lens? Yes and no, as you've heard, but there's a few alternatives. You can, for instance, take the old Helios 40mm f2.0, I think it is. Buy an adapter and you're roughly at the actual same price, but you do get much better image quality and you still have a fully manual lens. That's one of the things you can actually try. So guys, let me know what you think. TTArtisan, thank you for sending over this lens.